Hello, everyone. Welcome on in. It's another edition of the Betting Weekly Dojo with myself, Nigel Seeley, and my co-host, the birthday boy, Mr. Neil Channing. I know you don't like to talk about it, Neil, but very happy birthday to you today.
That's very kind of you. It's very kind. It's a busy day for me. I've just come off the phone to congratulate Judi Dench on her birthday. I've got to ring my mum. It's her birthday. And bloody John Malkovich, he's rung me already. I can't get him off the phone. It's his birthday as well today. Give that man his money.
Well, he watches every show every week, John Malkovich. He's always making comments in the YouTube below. But what are the odds of that then? Talking about betting, what are the odds of that? You and your mum share the same birthday.
Oh, I thought you were going to say me and Judi Dench.
No, not Judi Dench.
Well, you know that thing, there's that old thing, isn't there? If you get 20, you have to get 22 people into a room together in order to find two people, for it to be odds on that two people have the same birthday. It's very likely if you get 22 people that two people will have the same birthday, if you ever get a chance to get that out as a wager. If you've got a big family gathering this Christmas.
Very interesting.
I mean, it wouldn't work in our family because I could just get my mum in the room and then try and get my sister to bet, but she probably wouldn't want to bet me.
No,
she'll remember.
I'm looking here. Who else has got his birthday today? Joan Armour Trading. It's her birthday.
Joan Armour Trading, yes. She hasn't got. Never rings.
Never rings. Who else's birthday we've got today? We've got. Let's have a find out. We've got. At least people I don't even know. Billy Bremner, former Scottish international. He won't be able to call you because I think he's died. I don't think he can call you. Who else have we got his birthday today? Let's have a look. Is that? No, I don't have anything.
I'm actually very proud because the Racing Post, the paper of note for horse racing fans in the UK, they have a birthday section, and I think when I was 50, so a long time ago. I first made the birthdays page in the Racing Post. I was very excited.
Yeah.
And once you're in it, that's it. You're in it for life. They just update it. They just look at last year and go, is he still alive? Yeah, put him in. So, yeah, it's good. It means you get all kinds of wrong-uns and rogues messaging you.
Also, you got to share a birthday with two sports stars. I'll give you two sports stars. Mardy Fish, the American tennis player, born in Minnesota in 1981. And the US Open golf champion of 2023, Wyndham Clark.
Wyndham. I didn't know that.
Yeah, there you go. He's now your new favourite player. How's your week been? I always ask you this question.
It's been good. It's been good, actually, yeah. I had a good night on the NFL. I find on the NFL with those player props, when you get one that wins by half time, it's impossible to not think, oh, God, why didn't I have more on that one? It's just, some of them just seem so obvious. When you're sort of over 60 on somebody, over 64 and a half or something, and they get 130, you're just like, God, that was so obvious, that one. It was good. I had one of those ones that you really love when you're looking on Twitter and people are saying, why don't they throw him the damn ball? Is he even in the game? I had a guy, he hadn't caught a pass at half time. He'd had a brilliant week last week. And then he had a fantastic fourth quarter, Trey McBride, and he landed the over. That was a particularly good one. I had a little cheer.
When Neil mentioned the line of over 60 and a half, 64, it wasn't about Neil's age today for his birthday. It was about the Russian Lars in the American football last night. But winners have been on the channel. The channel have been flying over the weekend. So good winners on the football and the soccer. And Simon Holden gave Scotty Scheffler at 2-1. I know it's not a big price, 2-1 in a golf tournament, but his argument for it was absolutely exceptional on Betting Weekly Live.
Very interesting because Scotty Scheffler has come out. We haven't seen him for a little while, and he's come out and he's got the claw grip on his putting now. Now, of course, people that follow golf will know that Scotty Scheffler he's obviously had an amazing, 3 years really. But where he really wins his tournaments is in strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained approach. He's brilliant off the tee, but he's particularly brilliant with his irons. And where he's been weak has been his putting. And a couple of years ago, I remember saying in the Masters, if this guy could really putt, he wouldn't be, 5-1 to win the Masters. He'd be more like 6-4. Well, he absolutely annihilated them on the putting green. He was draining everything this weekend, and it does make you think, well, if he's changed his grip and he's cured his putting, we should be on. Actually, I haven't looked this morning. I should have thought of that. What price is he for the Masters?
Bet Rivers are the best price in the land, plus 450 to win.
Well, did they not watch
Masters?
at the weekend? What are they up to, these boys?
Well, plus 450 to win the Masters coming in April as well. But last week, though, I mean, Simon Holden gives me a lot of golf tips and talks about golf quite a lot. And some of the stuff I listen to, some of the stuff
Sorry
I
to
don't
hear that.
Listen, yeah, I know a lot of the stuff I listen to. But his argument was superb. He said that there was only 20 players in that tournament, or 25 players in the tournament, the Hero Championship, and he was plus 250 at the start, and he'd won it before and been second twice, and he'd only been second to Hovland, who wasn't playing. Changed it, won it by 6 shots. It was an easy. I was on it last night, so I don't really follow everything that we do, but it was a great week here. Not only on the.
I mean, obviously, going back to things that we often talk about on the show, it's only one tournament, and there's a danger of being swayed by recency bias, which we always warn that you should never do. And it's a small sample, which we always warn against. But then what we were talking about last week is basis change. And there are times when things just change and the market might be slow to catch up with them. I actually think this is a basis change. If he's changed his putting grip and he's now he just looked invincible on the shortish ones. I mean, I just looked on the prices on the exchanges for the Masters, and it's no real difference than it was a year ago. I don't know. I think I might have to be on.
Yeah, plus 450. And it looks a big price for the Masters. And obviously, it's a tournament that, people go well on it. You play well at Augusta, you play well the following year. He's won here before. Obviously, that incident last time around when he was in contention and he got pulled over by the police officer in that terrible incident, which obviously affected him in there. But, Scotty Scheffler on his game could be someone to follow. The golf season's coming to an end now. We're back in January.
There was another guy, actually, talking about golf. I won't bang on about golf, sure. But there's another guy that's got a Masters record that hasn't done very well in the last couple of years. Actually did really well this weekend and played well. And he's also got another golf thing that we sometimes talk about, the nappy factor. This idea that when a golfer first becomes a father, that they suddenly, although they're all multi-millionaires, the paternal instinct kicks in and they suddenly realise they need to settle down and be sensible and concentrate and focus. And it actually makes them improve as golfers. And the person I'm talking about is Justin Thomas. Now, he's a guy that I used to bet for the Masters every year, and the last couple of years he's just been awful. But I think there could be a basis change there as well. I think that might be too. Here you go. We sometimes do this, and people say, "Well, you don't give any tips out." It's not really a tipping program, the Dojo, but I'll give you a couple of tips. I'm definitely going to back those two for the Masters.
Yep, 28-1 you can get for Justin Thomas, plus 450 with Bet Rivers for Scotty Scheffler. While we're on the subject of that kind of stuff, I mean, I've been doing a lot of stuff. I've been doing a lot of anti-post betting this week. A lot of anti-post betting. It's unlike me to do a lot of anti-post betting. And the reason why I've done it, because I said it last week, I've been playing them FA Cup markets because the market is wrong still with Manchester City. And they're not rebasing this Chelsea side. I said it last week.
We did talk about that last week. And it is the whole thing about futures betting is that, the whole thing about the betting industry in the UK, which the Americans are probably learning, is that a lot of it is driven by the betting exchanges. When we were working in the industry, every firm had, 6, 8, 10, 12 guys who were odds makers that just sat around and discussed stuff and came up with prices. Then suddenly the exchanges came in. The firms were like, "Oh my God, we can save 10 salaries here. We can just lay off those guys and just employ one guy or write some software to track the prices of the exchanges. We won't even need to think about pricing stuff up." And the thing is that the futures markets, they're so weak on the exchanges, and it doesn't really work if there's very little liquidity because people on the exchanges don't like to tie their money up for a long time. So really, a lot of these futures prices that the bookies offer are just based on sand. And they're not. There's nobody employed there that's really got the time to be monitoring them and looking at them carefully. Basically, they don't really want to take bets on them. And this golf is an example. The FA Cup is definitely another example where stuff happens that should change the futures market, and there's no one there changing it.
Absolutely. And that was what happened over the last 6 or 7 weeks with our favourite conversation on this podcast, Strictly Come Dancing, which has reached the final. And our man, or your man, Neil, Chris McCausland is into the final. The market has finally woken up. He's like minus 1,600 now to win it. I think Neil, you can go and you can get your Christmas presents nice and early now before next week. I think you do your Christmas shopping on the winnings there. And if you want to look for me, I'm a size 36 waist and I'm at size 10 shoe if you want to go and look out for Christmas shopping for me. But yeah, that's in the bag now, surely.
What if you would you like me to get you some dancing shoes? Is that what you're saying, or some dancing trousers?
I'm worried about squeezing into the lycra. I'm worried about squeezing into the lycra.
I do think that first of all, the one interesting thing that happened was so this weekend, just one guy got eliminated who was 100 to 1 to win it, and the woman that he had to face in the dance off had done a brilliant dance. But she still got into the dance-off, which shows clearly what we've been saying all along, which is that the voting public don't really care about necessarily who's the best dancer. They're voting on who they like, and that was the whole purpose of the bet. And if she does a dance as good as she did this weekend and still has to face the dance-off, well, that means she just can't win. She's got no chance, because like almost zero, because it's very hard for her to dance any better than she danced this weekend. And she still, was in the last two of the public voting. And of course now we don't, the judges, they don't matter anymore. In the final next week, it'll just be on the public. I think there's probably a bit of inside information leaked out into the market. I mean, Chris McCausland was minus 350 before this weekend. Some of us had a bit more on. He's minus 1,600 now. So obviously part of that is because the judges are no longer involved. There's no more dance-offs. But I think part of it might be that people have seen the numbers and that started to leak into the market. And this stuff happens, like there is inside information in it for sure. But yeah, it's been great fun. It's been a great fun bet. I've really enjoyed it. I'm with you. It's like it's job done now. Wade in.
Job done. There's no doubt about it. I think it will be an absolute travesty if he doesn't win it, and I think it'll be the biggest shock I've seen this year. If he doesn't win it, I think it's in the bag. Chris McCausland will pay for Neil's Christmas and the following 5 Christmas, hopefully. Let's move on to the main conversation this week. We're going to talk about a couple of little things and just little things that we're going to come a recap on some of the subjects we've spoken about on the dojo. But one of the ones a lot of messages we get here is about staking size. I mean, it's something that we always talk about. You've mentioned many times before, when you see a big bet, you've got to go for it. You've got to go for it. There's a lot of people who say, listen, I stick to level stakes as we go on, and I just stick to level stakes. I'm one of these people who raises my stakes if I've got more money in the account and have lower stakes, depending on how much I have in my betting account. I don't know whether there's one real way to do this. Is there one way that we should do it, or is it one way, for each person's different in their separate way of thinking here? Sometimes if I've had a good week and I've got more money than I should have in one of my betting accounts, I'll have double the size of a wager than I should have. Probably wrong, not as big as it should, but it's in coordinate what I have in play. If somebody asks you this kind of question, what you do for staking, rising and lowering stakes, I'm probably doing it completely wrong, really. But what would your answer be to that?
Well, I do think I never understand people that say, "Well, I just bet level stakes all the way through." I mean, I can see the argument for someone saying, well, if I'm testing a theory, if I have a hypothesis, say, for example, that, I don't know, whatever, that Liverpool are really always a good bet at home, the only way to test that is to have an equal amount every time they play at home and see how you get on. Otherwise, if you keep varying it, you're not really going to prove it one way or the other. I can sort of see that, but the idea that you would have 100 bets in a week and that they'd all be of equal value to you, that, they'd all be as good as each other, well, that's just nonsense, isn't it? I mean, obviously, some of your bets you're going to feel more confident about, and some of them not so confident. Now, the one thing that I think a trap that people do fall into, which you should be really wary of, is to think, oh, it's a shorter price, I've got to have more on. The idea that you always bet something to win 100 or to win a tenner or whatever it is, that doesn't make any sense at all. For me, the varying of your stakes depends on the difference between the price that you make it and the price that you can see. So if something is, I don't know, 3-1, and you thought it should be 2-1, so plus 300, you thought it should be plus 200. Well, that's a big edge to you. Instead of a 33% chance, it's a 25% chance. That's a huge edge. You're not going to really get many bigger edges than that over a month. Like that should be one of the biggest bets you have that month. Now, obviously, you have to be able to assess accurately what your edge is, and if you're not very good at that, you'll probably find you end up being a losing punter. So if you see something and you think, well, I think that should be 2-1 and it's 3-1, you've got to ask yourself, well, what are they seeing that I'm not seeing? And go and double check things and make sure you've read up. And is there injury news? Is there and if you feel like the reasons for the wrong price are that you have some inside knowledge that the market doesn't have, or possibly that the market has inherent biases in it, like recency bias, for example, well, those are the times to strike. If it's possible that the market has inside information in it, maybe there's an unraced horse in a race or something, or if it's something like a reality TV thing or whatever, where people can know something that you don't know, well, now it's a bit more dangerous to be playing in that way. But I am a strong advocate for saying that you should vary your stakes according to the edge that you perceive that you've got, and you should bet bigger when you think you've got a bigger edge and smaller when you haven't. Now, a lot of people would say, well, one of the things about betting level stakes is that it stops you having throwaway bets, silly bets, fun bets. There's no fun in betting a loser. Some people would say, well, I don't really understand this concept of fun bets. Now I've noticed you sometimes talk about having a pizza bet, just, you're having a proper bet on the thing that you fancy, and you might throw a couple of bucks on the correct score at a big price or something like that. But it's not like you're deliberately setting light to money. I mean, if you fancy Arsenal to win the match and you decide to have a pizza bet on Arsenal to score 3 or more goals at a big price, well, these things are correlated, and obviously, it's not like you're deliberately doing something stupid. So I'm kind of a bit down on people that say you shouldn't really have a inverted commas fun bet. But I'm very big on saying that those should be very small relative to your inverted commas proper bets, the real ones where you're getting the money. Which is why, with Betting Emporium, the tipping site I'm involved in, we have quite a wide spread. We have 50 points as our maximum bet and 1 point as our minimum. And a lot of people are like, oh God, what, that's a bit crazy, How can I walk into the bookies and suddenly up my stakes by 40x? That's really hard to do. No one's going to want to take my action. Well, I'm not saying you have to start by having, £100 on the 1 point bet, and now you're having 5,000 on the 50 point bet. The 1 point bet might just be a £2 bet or something like that. But I still think there's a place for having those tiny bets. There's nothing wrong with it. All the time, every bet you have, though, you have to say, what is the price I'm being offered? What is the price I think it ought to be? Is there a margin there? Is there value in that bet for me? Then I'm gonna attribute the amount I bet accordingly. Now, the other thing you said was about, if you start to do well, you're having a good run. I don't know, say you start the football season and you have £1,000 set away to bet on the whole season, and after the first 3 or 4 games, you've now got 1,200. Should you start to bet bigger? Well, I think in that situation, yeah, I think that's okay. I think you can say, well, I've got, 20% more money, so I can have 20% more and everything. But I maybe wouldn't go that crazy. Oh my gosh, I don't know what's happening there. Big road traffic accident. I didn't bet on that. Anyway, whatever. I wouldn't go that crazy. I would maybe just edge my bets up slightly on that. But some people would say, well, you should do it very methodically. If your bankroll falls by 10%, then you drop your average stake by 10%, and if it goes up by 10%, you up it by 10%. I don't have a problem with that. If that's the way you want to play it, I think that's all right. There's nothing wrong with that. But the danger is always that you're reacting too quickly to the previous bet. You're just saying, well, I've had a really good weekend on the NFL. I'm just going to play much bigger next week. And of course, it's very short term. It's a small sample size. It's not like I've suddenly cracked the NFL just because I had a really good weekend. I've had a couple of rubbish weekends recently, and I've kept my stakes pretty level. Not level stake, but my per point amount has remained the same.
I think the other thing for me, especially, is that you don't know the volume you can get on now because your outlets are limited. And the amount of places that you can go where you can get that wager on, if it's a standout price and you think this is tremendously good value and you want more than £100 on, for example, that particular bookmaker might restrict you to a third of what you're requesting. And I think that plays havoc with my staking plans. So I will have an outlet with probably 2 or 3 sports books now, and then I'll have two individuals, and the individuals will allow me to bet heavier and bigger, and which I probably bet too much because I know I can get the wager down. And with the sports books, when they cut me back, I probably bet too small. And I think, if you've got an outlet where you can get unlimited on, your tendency is that you bet more with them rather than have smaller bets with them because you think, well, I've got a big limit with them, I can get on with them, and I've got a chance of hitting a big time with them. With the small one, you just try to build a small bank with them, and that's the problem I have, where I can't. If the market was full of volume and you knew that everywhere you go you can get what you wanted, then I think it'd be much easier to manage your stake. But when the little ticker goes round and the traders are reviewing your wager, you've got absolutely no idea what's coming back. And if that's a standout price and the next price is no value, I think that really does play havoc in running a staking system where you do. I mean, I followed some of your bets over some of the big horse racing meetings, for example, and you'll be recommending 16 points this and 14 points that. There'll be 2 or 3 that I literally can't get on, and the price is with the next sports book is not half, but say you're advising it at 14 to 1 and someone's offering 10 to 1, but with a lesser place. Do I go and bet with them, or do I leave it out? And most of the time I would leave it out, and that would be the one that makes me a winning day and a losing day.
Yeah,
so this becomes very, very, very frustrating.
Oh, yeah, I've definitely experienced all of that, and it can be very frustrating. I mean, the way I look at it is that as long as you know every bet you're having is plus EV, I have a couple of guys. I might send a guy some horses on a Saturday, and he'll just come back to me and say, "Well, I got you these ones on," and I might have sent him a dozen, and he might come back and say, "Well, there was 3 I could get on at the prices you wanted." And so I end up having more on those 3 than I do on the other 9. I mean, I've got several people doing that, but there'll always be a couple of horses where I get on more than others, and I try and maintain some kind of staking plan, but sometimes I end up having double on a 20 to 1 chance, and only a quarter of what I wanted on a 4 to 1 chance. And obviously a 4 to 1 chance got more chance of winning than a 20 to 1 chance. But yeah, I mean, when you say to me on a Monday, have you had a good weekend? It's often, if I've had a good weekend, it's often because it just worked out that I got 4 times as much on the 10 to 1 than I did on the 3 to 1, and the 10 to 1 actually won for a change. And yeah, it means my weekends can be a bit random in that way. But I just feel like, generally speaking, as long as you're having plus EV bets, it'll work out in the long run.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything more frustrating than getting 20 bets on a day's horse racing card at a big meeting, missing out 2 of them because the price has moved so much, and those 2 win, and you lost on them. And I don't think there's anything more frustrating, because then that plays a mental effect on you, because the following day you tend to think, well, do I go in again because my bank is smaller? Should I cut my stakes back? And inadvertently, most times you go in, you either bigger or you drop it smaller, you never read it right because your head's still fuzzy from the day
You're
before.
exactly right. So those horse race meetings. So again, I don't want to bang on about Betting Emporium, but if you do want to sign up, www.bettingemporium.com. But we cover the horse race meetings, and we've been very profitable over the last kind of 10 years. The last couple of years, I would say, it hasn't been as good as I'd have hoped. We've had winning meeting, losing meeting, winning meeting, losing meeting, and made a small profit on the year, but pretty small. And it's quite funny because a couple of those meetings, we started off going a long way in front. We had a really good first day or for the first 2 days, and then we had an absolute disaster on either the third or the fourth day, and we kind of gave all the money back. And then there was a meeting, the last meeting that we did last year. The first 2 days were a disaster, and then halfway through the third day, we had a 10-1 winner, and then we had a 14-1 winner, and then we had a 12-1 winner, and it ended up being a brilliant day, the best day that I've had on the horses for probably 5 years. We had a fantastic week, and actually, the numbers. So it's just that if you start off winning a lot and then you lose it back, I think it's much more disappointing than if you lose a lot and then win it all back.
Yeah.
I think that people remember that a lot more.
Certainly.
And in terms of the number of people that subscribe to the next meeting, that seems to bear it out. I think people get more frustrated from winning and losing it back than they do from losing and then winning a lot at the end. I think that is the best feeling in gambling. But of course, all of those things are fairly random, and at the end of the day, it's just what we've made over the year that should count. And we've made a profit. It's not as big as I'd have hoped in the last couple of years, but it's good. It's good enough, and it beats losing. I can tell you that.
Definitely. Then we spoke last week, Neil, about the sort of rebasing on football teams. We talk about Manchester City, and obviously Manchester City and Pep Guardiola still having a bit of a bad time. They drew at the weekend, not playing at all well. They did have.
Did you bet them? I actually ended up betting them at 2-5
against Nottingham Forest
in the Notts Forest game.
No.
And then I was lucky actually because I got distracted and was doing other things on the Saturday, and I didn't get involved in it. They drew with Crystal Palace, didn't they?
I think where there's my personal opinion on these is where the rebase is. I mean, I'm looking at them more in the bigger matches. So for the week, like next match, they're playing Manchester United in the Manchester Derby. Now the price on that will be a lot different, because they look at the Manchester they would be prior to this capitulation. So, I mean, they're still heavy favourites to win that. They're like 1-2 to win that match. But I'm looking to oppose them more in Champions League matches where they go abroad and they play a tough side and they're still marketed up as the team to beat in that competition. So that's where I haven't really got involved. I wouldn't get involved in a 2-5 shot, especially Man City in their current state of form. But they were like minus 130 to beat Crystal Palace at the weekend, and they were very lucky to beat them. But there's something not right there anyway.
Did they beat Crystal Palace? I thought it was a draw.
They drew.
That was a draw. Yeah.
But I mean, there's something clearly not right. He was moaning at Guardiola was moaning at the referee again. It's clearly something not right there. And I think the best value, the biggest value, the way I see that market now is probably not in the matches. I think the market value is on their Manti posts because, like I said, their ratings are just so rated still ridiculous.
I think what you said about the FA Cup last week was a brilliant shout. They're definitely a fade in the FA Cup, and I think you said you bet Liverpool and Chelsea. I couldn't agree more. Brilliant. Chelsea I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah. And also the Champions League, I think they're second favourites. I mean, they're nowhere near the likes of Barcelona and Liverpool at the moment on a level pitch. And you're saying on a neutral pitch, there'd probably be a pick and match. Well, that's not the way it is at the moment. But anyway,
well, we were talking about rebasing generally, and a guy sent me the stuff about the cricket.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of Americans aren't. We did a show about cricket when we very first launched at the Better Weekly Studios. We had a few people watch it, but it never really kicked on. Obviously, and then the Americans had the 2020 World Cup over there, So they are getting used to a lot more cricket. There's a lot of expats, obviously, a lot of Indian community, Bangladesh.
It's funny, isn't it? Because I, obviously played a lot of poker over the years, and I'm sure I've mentioned that before. You knew that anyway. I don't know whether everyone at home knew that, but I would always go to the World Series of Poker, and a guy was coming round one year who's involved in the TV coverage that I knew a little bit, and it was in the early stages of the main World Series event. And he just had a notepad and he was taking a few notes. And I said, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And he said, "I'm just looking around to see if there's any stories, I'm just looking for people. We won't be doing the filming until the day after tomorrow, but I'm making notes of people that we might want to follow that could make for a story." And I said, "Well, there's a guy over there. He's probably the most famous person." There was I think it was about 3,000 people in the room where I was. And I said, "That guy is probably the most famous person in this room. And I bet you don't even know his name." And he said, "Which guy?" And I said, "Well, the guy on the end with the kind of dyed, bleached hair." And he looked at him and he said, "Well, I've got, what, that guy there? No, I've got no idea." And I said, "Well, if he was walking around the street in India or Pakistan or South Africa or the UK or New Zealand or Australia, he would be mobbed. But he can walk around in America and nobody has a clue who he is." And it was Shane Warne. And, he's one of the most famous cricketers of all time. He was probably, I would say he was more famous than like a Michael Jordan or someone like that in terms of planetary fame. The number of people that there are in India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, and obviously, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, that follow cricket. And, in America, just not really a sport. But, it's funny, really. But I do think it is, obviously it's a massive betting sport. It's always been a massive betting sport. But we were talking last week about the draw, and I was really just talking about it as an example of how there can be a basis change in a market. Something fundamentally changes, but the market is very slow to react. And there's a tendency in betting, I think, for people to feel like, well, the market's all knowing. It's hard to have an edge in betting because the market will always catch up with your edge and eradicate it quite quickly because of the efficiency of markets, this fallacy that markets are so clever. So this fella sent me, it was David, who's a very lovely bloke who I've always liked, but I think he nicked it from somebody else. There's a guy online that does this. Anyway, he looked at test matches. So this is international cricket matches since 2008. And if you bet either to win 100 or if it was not a short odds thing, you had 100 on, how much would you win or lose each year betting the draw in cricket matches? And 2008, 2009, 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. How many winning years do you think you'd have had if you just bet the draw in every match?
I'm going to go for none. Not one winning year.
None is the correct answer. How much do you think you'd have lost? Either having to win 100, if it was kind of a minus 200 or something, having 200 to win one, or if it was plus 200, staking 100 to win 200. How much do you think you'd have lost in that time?
So how many test matches are there in
There's roughly about 50 a year.
I reckon you're losing 30 grand.
Yeah, 22,857 units.
Wow.
I mean, it's pretty amazing. And if you just faded the draw, so you put in a lay bet on a betting exchange, you'd have made about 7.5 grand doing that.
But can that continue though? I mean, are we missing the trend?
You say can it continue? The 2,000 out of the 22,800 that you'd lost, over 4,000 of that, the worst year, is in 2024. Now you would think that 2024 would be, the market might be catching up by now. They might have figured it out, but no, it's actually It's actually your worst year. I mean, that's kind of crazy, isn't it, really?
I always worry about things like that in case we've missed the boat. I always
Well,
think to
yeah.
myself, well, I know in my luck I'll get
Presumably that's
involved.
what
And then
everybody thinks.
Yeah, but
This must be the year when it turns around. Now, he sent me that a week ago. I think there's been 3 test matches this week. I think the draws were plus 250 in one of them. I think one of them it was plus 900. I can't remember what the other one was. It was about plus 450 or something like that. None of those 3 were draws. I'm just trying to find, somebody else sent me a thing with the prices of the draws in the 40. At the time, I think there'd been 43 this year. I think obviously there's been more than 43 now. There's been 3 this week. I think we might be up to 49 this year now.
Oh.
And this guy sent me. I'm just trying to find it. I think I've lost it, actually.
I know my luck. I know what will happen. I'll get involved. This will go completely and utterly. I know it will. Well, I mean, it's just a staggering thing that the market doesn't change. But it's driven by Asians, isn't it? Indian market must be just driving.
Yeah, so the Indian bettors, it's illegal to bet in India. So most of the bookmakers are illegal bookmakers who are based in Dubai, and people have accounts in the same way that the States used to have kind of offshore on the islands and stuff. So that's kind of how it works. But yeah, basically it's the money's going offshore in that way. But yeah, I mean, there is a sophisticated market that's been around for. Oh, here we go. I found it. So I'll quickly read these out. I'll read it as quickly as I can. This was the prices on the draw in this year's matches. So this is decimalized. I'll do it decimalized so it's quicker. 6.4, 7.4, 24, 9.4, 15, 10, 10.5, 8.8, 14, 9.8, 7.2, 11.5, 9.26, 8.4, 9, 8.4, 9.2, 14.5, 14.5, 4.6, 18.5, 3.7, 8, 6.6, 4.6, 12, 1.83, that was a short one, 8.6, 2.86, 12, 7, 1.91, another short one, 5.5, 5.9, 1.39, that was a short one, that got beat, 5.6, 10, 6.8, 11.5, 16, 2, 21, 15, 4.9, 14, and 9.2. I don't know what the average is of that, but it's probably around about 6.5 plus 650, something like that.
If you've just joined the show, that isn't Chris McCausland's scores on dancing this year. That's the price of the draw in the cricket. 6.5. He probably averaged 6.5 as well.
That is amazing. And the washout game that I think I mentioned, there was one that it rained all the time. Obviously, that would have been void for betting purposes. I believe there was one draw the whole year. And you'd have done your money on one game, which I think was plus 275 or something like that. But yeah.
Why didn't we have this conversation this time last year, Neil? Why have we left it?
Well, we're having it now,
yeah, yes.
And I'm telling you, we just set up the bet. We don't even look at it. We don't even think about it, and we can buy a nice car each at the end of the year.
Can we get someone to just manage it for us so we don't have to do it? So it just reminds us. Is that we can?
Nigel, if you want to give me, 10% of your nice car, I'll happily manage it for you,
mate. I bought a new car the other day, and I haven't driven it. I'm not allowed to drive it because my missus doesn't like my driving.
I think the police have made a wise decision there.
I'm not allowed to drive it. She won't let me anywhere near the car.
The point really on the cricket was that it is amazing how markets can change fundamentally, and that there is a reason behind it. The tactics and style of cricket has just changed, and the way that the coaches perceive the game now has completely changed, and the market just can't keep up with it. We talked as well about Italian football, and I did have a quick look at that. And if you'd have bet, the goals are up again in Italy this year, and if you'd have bet over 2.5 in every game, you'd be making a profit. Just blindly betting over 2.5 every game this season. Now, and I think the reason for that is that we perceive Italian football as being quite boring, and we remember back to our childhood when there was a lot of 1-0 matches and people would sit on leads and whatever. I think foreign coaches have come in, and that's changed it. There's a different style of football now, completely different, and the market just doesn't seem to have caught up with it. Now, what was the other one we were talking about? Oh, there's a home
Well,
advantages. We had quite a long conversation about home advantages. Sorry, go on.
we're going to speak next week. We're going to have all the analysis on the soccer leagues, and we'll look at the total goals market, because obviously I'm always someone there with people laugh at me about my under betting, and traditionally that kind of play. We'll have a look at all those sort of trends next week on the total goals in the leagues around Europe. We'll have all the statistics at hand. Home advantage is a fact. We don't usually give bets on here this week. We never usually give bets on this show. So, and we've got tips and the Masters Championship. We've got a midweek bet that you quite like in the Championship this week. We've got all kinds of stuff. Champions League this weekend as well, obviously with home advantage. I was going to come on to that a little bit. Obviously Champions League this weekend. You can watch us on Betting Weekly Live tomorrow and Wednesday, looking at the Champions League matches. And we talk about rebasing. Manchester City travel to Juventus in midweek, and they're minus money to win in Italy. And bearing in mind, when they were pretty good, they played Juventus in the Champions League a few years ago, and Champions League and Juventus did the double over Manchester City. They haven't got a good record against the Italians, so maybe minus money there could be the time to oppose them on the Asian handicap or something like that. But we'll have you covered for that on Betting Weekly Live. And Neil, look at that home advantage. You found some angles on that. You got a little bet you like it on the midweek here with going against home advantage again.
Yeah, I mean, actually, well, I was thinking, I started looking at it. First of all, I found a paper, and I started reading one of these, after last week. Well, these kind of college professors that sit down and they've got all the time in the world to write this stuff. Some guy had done a whole load of research into the reasons in NFL why home advantage is decaying over the years. It's not as important a thing as it was. And of course, we talked about travel, which he found to be a huge factor. That organising your travel is much easier these days. Planes don't. There's not as much trouble with flying places as there used to be 20 years ago, generally speaking. Especially if you've got money and you've got your own team plane and all this kind of stuff. So that's. He agreed basically with what we were saying. That's a major factor. But there was one that I hadn't even really thought about, which is obvious. Well, there was another thing that we sort of touched upon, which is that the stadiums have changed and the whole kind of, having a place to go that players are scared of going to because it's intimidating has slightly changed. And that's because of ticket prices. People are priced out of going to NFL games these days, and also, soccer matches in the UK. It's a very expensive hobby going to watch every single home game. So the idea that kind of normal working class lads turn up and they're singing and shouting is a bit different, because now the kind of people that can afford to pay a couple of $100 for a day out to go and watch a game, they're probably not going in kind of big groups that are having a few drinks before and being quite loud. It's much more of a family thing or a corporate thing. So the intimidation factor has gone because of that. Now, I think we kind of sort of hinted at that. We thought it was more to do with the layout of the stadiums and sitting down and stuff. But I think that you can see the two go together. But the massive thing that this professor found it's to do with in soccer, VAR, and in NFL, coaches' challenges and instant replay. The idea that referees would be intimidated by the crowd and therefore give slight sort of hometown decisions has kind of gone now, because we can just run it back and check whether the decision was right. And that wasn't happening 10 years ago. So that has probably slightly changed the home advantage. And it's not an obvious thing that people would have thought of. I don't know. Is that an obvious thing that I should have thought of?
Well, I think that in hindsight, yes, it is an obvious thing we should have spoken about.
Yeah, I feel like an idiot.
But really, it's a very good one, isn't it? I mean, I was saying when we spoke about it off air, I said, the man in 500 miles away can make a VR decision and put that referee in all kinds of problems when he's getting off that football pitch on a Saturday afternoon. But it is, the crowd do influence results, and we saw lots of those kind of decisions not during lockdown, where we saw the massive change in statistics on football matches, soccer matches in lockdown when they're playing with no crowd at all. Goals were up through the roof. Refereeing decisions weren't, sort of factored in by the home support. Very, very different match we're seeing, and that is definitely something that perhaps we should have thought of. But definitely something to make look at in the future as well.
The other thing, of course, is the travel generally, and you'll notice I'm not sitting with my clock behind me this week because I'm not down in Devon. But in Devon, there's a couple of teams that play in the football: Exeter and Plymouth. And it's funny because they have to go quite a long way for some games. So not so much Exeter because Exeter are in League One, and the northeastern teams are not really in that division. There are some Yorkshire teams, teams like Rotherham, and that's kind of up that way, isn't it? Barnsley is in North Yorkshire, and I can't remember now. Let me see. Huddersfield is up that way. So they have a few games where they have to travel quite a long way, Exeter. But in the Championship, Plymouth are really kind of stuck down there on their own in the bottom left-hand corner of England. If you're watching from Australia or America and you aren't familiar with Plymouth, Plymouth is in that little bit that kind of the kind of boot of England. It's down there, the bottom left, and places like Sunderland and Middlesbrough are up at the top right, up near the border of Scotland. So for those matches, that's a huge long journey for teams to go on. And Plymouth, you'll know, Nigel, because you follow lower division soccer more than most people. They're managed by former Man United legend Wayne Rooney. And he's been the manager since May, and actually they've been pretty terrible. They're not doing very well at all.
That's being polite on them. They've been awful.
They have been awful. But there's been a huge split between their home and away games, which kind of rubbishes what we've been saying. And it may be because I guess it must be connected to the distance of travel. So actually, they're not doing a very good job, Plymouth, at backing up what we've been saying in the last couple of weeks. So they've played 10 away games this year. They haven't won one. They've drawn 2, and they've lost 8. And they've only scored 3 goals away from home the whole season, and they've conceded 27, which is pretty horrendous. But at home, if you just took their home games, they'd be 11th in the league. They've played 8 home games. They've won 4. Drawn 3, and they've only lost 1, and they've managed to score 15 and concede 11. Now, Exeter, who are pretty much just down the road from Plymouth, they're equally, stuck miles away from everywhere. Their split is different. They're 12th in the league for home games and 13th in the league for away. So they much more back up what we're saying. Anyway, I think Plymouth, they're having this terrible run. And it could be that Wayne Rooney's under pressure. I don't know. I'm kind of surprised he's still there, really. He's recently sacked the assistant manager, I believe, and brought in a sort of former Man U legend to come and help him out. But they're playing at home tomorrow against Swansea. And, they're having first of all, they've got loads of injuries, Plymouth. I think they've got 7 people missing. Which is quite a lot, really. And in their last 9 games, they've conceded 25 goals. They 6 went past them against Norwich and 4 against Bristol City. I don't know. I mean, obviously the home thing is a rubbish tip, really, considering it goes against everything we've been talking about the last couple of weeks. I'm going to disregard the fact that Plymouth have some kind of home advantage, a massive home advantage here. I think the crowd will be on their back. They'll be booing them. I don't think they'll get an advantage in that respect. We know already that the referees are not bothered by home advantage anymore. It's not like Plymouth are, selling out the stadium at the moment. I think minus $1.10 Swansea is a really big price given how it's going for Plymouth.
They are awful, absolutely awful. Mike Phelan is the guy who's come into Plymouth. Which is, I think it's a good appointment at that level, but it's going to take a bit of time. Mike Phelan was brilliant under Sir Alex Ferguson, but with all due respect, I think you and I could be brilliant. So
he's older than me, Mike Phelan.
Yeah,
he's in his 60s now.
That's who it is. That's who he's brought in to help him. So, it's it's game over for Rooney as manager here. Everywhere he's gone in the league, Derby, Birmingham, Plymouth, it hasn't worked out. This is a very poor side that concede an awful lot of goals. I think the other thing about their home form is that when it's horrid and windy and horrible kind of place, that's when they really they do well. The wind has gone. And Swansea are an improving outfit. So, yeah, I could see that with the injury crisis. I like that play indeed. But Plymouth are a side that are destined for relegation battle or relegation for the drop unless they change Rooney quickly. And I think it's going to be inevitable in the next... I don't think you'll see Christmas. Put it that way. What we got to do, Neil? What are we going to do if we're going to follow? If anyone wants to follow us, what are they got to do?
Oh, yeah, I should tell you, shouldn't I? It's about time I said that. I should have said it at the start, really. Last week, I think, in terms of the likes on the YouTube, we still only got about 10% of people that watch the video hit the like button. I can't believe it because I feel like the comments are always really positive. Is it just that the people that don't like us just keep very quiet about it? Who knows? Anyway, all you've got to do is go to that like button and click it. And then also over to the left of that, there's another button which says subscribe. It doesn't involve you getting any money out. It just means that you'll get a reminder whenever one of these shows come up. And we know you'll want to join us every week. So do join us at the dojo by pressing the subscribe button. And we'd really love to get that number of subscribers up to 10,000. It's taken a while. We're going to do it. I'm sure we're going to do it. But you can help right now. It doesn't cost you anything.
Sounds like Bob Geldof asking for people to feed the Welsh back in the day there and Live Aid while Queen are playing and the telephones are ringing. Absolutely unbelievable. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. As I say, there is a lot of content coming your way this week on the Betting Weekly Studios. As Neil said, please do join us. We have Betting Weekly live every day, 11 o'clock Eastern time. One of the handicapping crew will be there looking at the best sporting action for the week, which includes Champions League football on Tuesday and Wednesday. Those shows are usually very, very heavily watched. We have Betting Weekly, Premier League, Betting Weekly Extra Time, and we're only a couple of weeks now from the start of the ATP Tour tennis season. Can you believe that? It's already starting again at the end of this month. And next week on the Betting Weekly Studio newsletter, we have a guide to the new ATP Tour season, as well as some best bets on the year from myself, Sean Calvert, and some of the handicappers on the team. You can subscribe to that newsletter by going to www.bettingweeklystudios.com. Neil, thank you very much for your time. I know it's your birthday. Go and have a celebration with your mum. I know John Malkovich is coming around. You've got Judy Dench out for the sinner to say. And I know we're going to bump into Marley Fish for a game of doubles and a little bit of Wyndham Clark for a quick 9 holes on your birthday. Take care, everyone. Thanks for watching the dojo. Have a good day, and we'll catch you all next week.